Hi, today we will learn Dutch or Netherlands and bahasa Indonesia or Indonesian language. Bahasa is language, Indonesia is Indonesia. Bahasa Indonesia is Indonesian. Bahasa Inggris, England. Bahasa Inggris, English. About these words in Dutch and in Indonesian. The letters with green colors here, it's how I try to remind myself. It's written in Indonesian letters, so you might want to ignore it. This column is in English, this column is in Dutch, this column is in Indonesian. Ik. In Indonesian is aku or saya, the formal ones, but it's a bit complicated. I think I will make another video about aku or saya or I in Indonesian. I think I made that video a long time ago, but I forgot in which video, so yeah. Most of the times we call ourselves with saya because if you use aku, particularly to your senior or to people who is or are older than you, it's considered as impolite. But both aku and saya are formal Indonesian words. Just use saya. Formal and polite. In Dutch, this is a bit tricky for me because as you may notice and you may already know, I'm not a native, but I try to pronounce it the best I can do, but I cannot implant or clone my throat to have maybe a little sack of liquid or something like that. So I don't have liquid in my throat most of the times. The best way to pronounce this letter particularly is I will pronounce this as oh. But the correct way, let me collect my liquid first. Prepare for this letter. The correct way is yeah. Sometimes if you meet or I have to meet a really perfectionist one, they will ask me to repeat to get the correct way. But I don't have enough liquid. It's impolite to wait. Let me collect the liquid first and then I can pronounce it in a perfect way. But it's impolite to make people wait. But sometimes, you know, when you meet someone who's really perfectionist, I always find out that when they try to learn another language, they're not as good as what they expected others to speak in their language either. So sometimes I kind of think like, oh, you expect me to just repeat until really perfect, but in terms of them learning or try to speak another language, it's not correct anyway. It's kind of a bit far than standard or perfect. So just take it easy. Take it with a grain of salt. In Indonesian, mata. egg. In Dutch, I hear it's kind of like compilation of these 4 Indonesian letters, even though this letter we write it without this sign above, but I make it distinct with this one because we pronounce this as e, and this one with this sign as e. In Indonesian letters, a, e, I, y, ai. And in Indonesian, telur. Indonesian L, letter L, is a bit simple, easy, no need to use lots of tongue muscle. You just say la, li, lu, le, lo. That's how we pronounce this letter L. Telur. But the R, it has to be stronger because foreigner always call my name with Ira. It should be Ira, Ira, R. But I understand that foreigner always call or pronounce the R letter in between Indonesian R and L. R. But this one, if you want to say it in a quote perfect way, telur. And I put this letter O because this is the formal way to pronounce it and to write it, telur. But most of the times, including myself, we use slang or casual words in our daily conversation. But of course, in academic field and also in formal meetings, we will just switch back to the formal or a bit formal words and sentences. And this one, the slang or casual one, is telur instead of telur. I think why we pronounce some words in slang because we choose to, or we tend to choose the way to say the word as minimal as possible. So sometimes the sentence is not in a complete formation. Most of the times we reduce the subject or the time signal. And we also reduce the amount or the strength of tongue muscles that needed to be moved. That's why when we say telur instead of telur, we don't have to move the mouth and the tongue so drastically or too much. We just say telur, 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 telur. You can try to figure it out whether it's correct. Telur is, you don't need enough movement for your mouth and for your tongue. This word, land, in Dutch is written in the same way with in English, but the way we pronounce it is a bit different. And again, as Indonesian, my L, I have to practice or to prepare much more because Dutch L is L, L, it's you swirl your tongue. L, 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 L. In Indonesia, la, Dutch L, L. So this becomes land. Don't forget the D. Land. And in Indonesian, the noun one is lahan. This land as verb in Dutch is also the same with the previous one that I have pronounced. But in Indonesian, we have another word for it, which is mendarat. The base or basic or original word is darat. We add the prefix me, and because this original or the base or basic word has letter the as initial, so that the prefix me, it becomes mendarat, land as verb. There's interesting thing here. This base or basic word, darat, can be also added with suffix an, daratan, it becomes land as noun, lahan or daratan. But land as verb, mendarat. In English and in Dutch, we use several verbs for the present times and sometimes for the past or for the future we add some words. But in Indonesian, we use one verb. There's no past participle or verb that you use for the previous one. And also for each subject, we also use the same verb for the same action. In this case, if you want to say landed in Indonesian, it will be the same, mendarat. But you have to add extra word sometimes. Or you add the time signal to make sure when it's happened. Like, or such as yesterday, 2 minutes ago, or next month. The verb itself is the same, mendarat. In Dutch, the past participle form for this word, which is in English landed, in Dutch, we have to add these two letters. I have to prepare myself again to prepare the liquid. Sorry. Eiland. Eiland. But most of the times, I don't want to be impolite by make people wait. Of course, I will try to pronounce it the best I can do, which is Eiland. I count it as good enough. Until maybe someday when there's ILand or I don't know. But for now, the best I can do, Eiland. Even though if you meet perfectionist one, maybe you have to repeat. Eiland. Yeah. But remember, when someone's really perfectionist like that, maybe later you will notice when they try to speak in others' language or when they learn another language, you will just notice they're also not as good as what you think or something like that. So don't be so hard on yourself. Don't make those kind of stuff make you depressed or frustrated. So you're kind of you become hating the language or so. Don't do the same mistake like what happened to me before. And Eiland in Indonesian, pulau. Simple, easy, breezy, L, pulau. Pulau. And in Dutch, these two letters is compilation of these four letters in Indonesian. A, E, I, Y. Don't forget the L or the L. Eiland. 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 Netherlands, in Dutch, you don't use the letter S here because the letter S will appear here, will appear as the language. In English, Netherlands, but in Dutch, without the letter S. And I kind of think there's I in Indonesian letter, I in between this letter and this letter. So it will be pronounced as with this kind of intonation. Nederland. Nederland. Land. And the sometimes I kind of drag it into Indonesian R, but yeah, it should be Nederland. And in Indonesian, easy breezy L, Belanda. Belanda. I think it's from Holland, Hollanda, it becomes Belanda. And Dutch in English as language is in this form with the letter S, and the way you pronounce it is also with this kind of intonation. Netherlands. Don't forget the S. In Indonesian, it becomes a phrase of two words. First, bahasa, it means language. And then the name of the country or the nation. In this case, Belanda. And the initial for country's name, of course you have to write it in capital or uppercase, but this initial B in bahasa, you have to always write it with lowercase. But you might find Indonesian write this letter in capital when this phrase is in the middle or at the end of the sentence. And that is incorrect. Unless this phrase, bahasa Belanda, starts the sentence, of course you have to write this initial in capital or uppercase. But if this phrase, bahasa Belanda, is in the middle or at the end of your sentence, you have to always write this initial B with lower case. But of course, this B in Belanda always with capital or uppercase. And now, Dutch as Dutch people. For singular, you don't use the or the letter S. For plural, you use the letter S. Nederlanders, plural, but you have to speak it with the intonation. Nederlander, Nederlanders. in Indonesian, you add orang in front of the name of the country or the nation. It becomes a phrase. Orang Belanda. Orang, it means people, but in Indonesia, whether it's one or more than one, let's say sometimes we know from the sentence after or from the sentence before, or sometimes we don't have to know whether it's one or more than one, because the common one is just a phrase of two words, which are orang Belanda. But it's also not wrong if you write it this way, orang hyphen orang, because the way you make noun as plural in Indonesian is by repeat the noun and then you put hyphen in between. But again, it's rarely being used, this phrase of orang, and then the name of the country, because the common one is just orang Belanda, the name of the country. In this case, Belanda. Whether it's one or more than one, we just say it with orang Belanda. And foreigner will call my country's name as Indonesia, but how Indonesian pronounce their own country, including myself, is Indonesia. Indonesia. In Dutch, you replace the letter here into this letter, and don't forget to put two dots above this letter, because it means you have to pronounce this letter. If you don't put these two dots, it becomes E, but you put these two dots, it becomes E, and we pronounce this with this kind of intonation, Indonesia. Indonesian as language. In Indonesian, you just add the word bahasa and then the second word Indonesia. Don't forget, this initial has to always be written in lowercase when this phrase is in the middle or at the end of your sentence. But when you have this phrase starts your sentence, of course you have to write this initial of letter B with capital or uppercase. And in Dutch, I also kind of think there's a bit letter E in Indonesian in between here and here, this one and this one, I mean, here in between this one and this one. And we have two letters, C and H, to make extra texture, because if not, you will pronounce this as without this one. It becomes sis. But now you have the C and H, you give extra texture, it becomes shish. Instead of sis. Texture. And the way you pronounce it is Indonesia. And the people I don't have to explain this one again. It is the same. The common one is just orang. But it's not wrong if you say or write it this way, repeat with hyphen. But common one is orang Indonesia. And in Dutch, don't forget, there's 2 dots here, I, to make it not being pronounced as I. 2 dots, I. With S for plural, without S for singular. Indonesia. Indonesiers. Thank you.